Record. Hey, I usually start this podcast with hello, folks. But tonight on February 5th, 2025, we're starting with Let's Get After It, people, because we're here to honor Bob Sanger, beloved coach, one of the most influential people in our lives. And Coach Sanger passed away 5 years ago today on February 5th, 2020. Uh, I got three of his former assistants on here. We've been chatting it up for a little bit before we hit record. I got Ben Muller, Chuck Buseman, Brian Benning. Each of them has done an individual episode with me, and tonight we're going to come together and honor Coach Sanger and tell some good stories about him and his wife, Miss Sanger, his boys, other coaches, athletes. It's going to be a good time. Make sure you watch this thing all the way through tonight. Uh, of course, though, I got a bunch of sponsors we got to hit before I get to these three good-looking young gentlemen. The Bob and Linda Sanger Legacy Fund is going strong. All that money's going back into the communities and the schools. So I got to make sure we give them their time. Tonight I have Daniel's Auto Collision in Charles City, Jeff and Becky Nielsen, Lehmann Family Dental in Clear Lake, Jay Hiscocks State Farm Insurance, the Britt Food Center, Tractor Tuesday, Lakes to Luxury Travel out of Garner, Lois Conaway, KT Facilitation owned by Karie Terhark, Johnson Drainage, owned by Scott and Ryan Johnson, Carlson Drainage, owned by Darin Carlson, and Stevens Realty. And then my lifetime sponsors that do every episode, they gave $400 to the Legacy Fund. Got a lot of them now. That's Levi Dawn Trucking, Window World in Mason City, Doug and Kathy Zool, Pritchard's Auto, Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, Triple B's Food Trucks, Swenson's Hardware, Zach and Chris Schlugger, Nick Schmidt, Kelly Real Estate, the Britt Car Truck Bike and Tractor Night Cruises and Mojo Productions, Mike Muth Welding, Stacy and Carrie Gopal, I promise I'm almost done here, Main Salon, Jason Gardner with Wiffles Hybrids, and then Britt Seed Company is my newest lifetime sponsor. And then Ben Hartman, who you guys, a couple of you guys coach Ben, he gave me a good idea of can I have someone just be on the podcast to be honored in like a non-sponsorship type way? And he picked Billy Dahlman. So Ben actually gave the lifetime sponsorship amount just to have Billy's name on this thing all the time because Billy's
Absolutely.
giving
You got
back
it, Ben.
to the community for 50 some years and he can still kick it in the wrestling room and show those guys how to wrestle. So thanks, Ben, and Billy. We love you, and thanks for all you do for the communities and the school. So again, all that money goes to the Sanger Legacy Fund. If you want to give, you can go to sangerstrong.com. I am asking, since today is the 5 year anniversary of Coach's passing, if you can hop on there and just give $5, give whatever you can give, but give something to honor Coach Sanger, and all that money goes right back to the community and the schools. So 50 episodes ago, on episode 78, I talked to Eric Cooley and Vance Hagen. And then 100 episodes ago, episode 28 was Jason Harle. Guy, a couple of you guys I know for sure know. He was fast. Um, I always give Jason a hard time. The one time I was in Tallahassee, he was in Iowa, and we didn't get a hookup, and
Yeah,
would have had a good time together. So,
That's
all
bad
right,
luck.
fellas. Enough of me talking. Let's do some quick introductions here. Again, you guys have had your own episode, but some people might not have watched that just yet, or they're new to the podcast or whatever. So let's just go around, tell them who you are, what years you were in Britt or Kanawha, and where you're at these days. Coach Benning, let's start with you.
All right. Brian Benning. I was in Britt, West Hancock from 98 to '04. Some great years. I started my first year was down in Kanawha with Sue Wood and Kurt DeVore, which I have not listened to that episode, but I'm going to, you two. God, we had some great times down there. 98 to '04. Chuck taught across the hall from me, and Ben came in a little bit, did what, a year later, 2 years later, but 98 to '04.
Where are you at now?
I'm teaching at Applington Parkersburg. 3 years to retirement.
Jeez. Ambassador Muller, let's have you go next.
Ben Muller. I was a middle school social studies teacher or junior high teacher in Kanawha from 2000, I think it was 2099 through about five and then or four. Then I was the middle school principal there for 1 year. Did a lot of middle school sports there, was the AD, and then went to the high school in 2005, and was the high school principal there for 2 years. I'm currently in Ankeny, in our district as an elementary principal. And yeah,
And what just happened like yesterday, Mr. Muller?
Oh yeah, I just took a different gig, director of
Wow.
student services. So a different challenge for us, and that will be brought up probably tonight a little bit at some point.
Maybe.
That's what we were trying to figure out what his new title is. I'm going with Ambassador
I
Muller.
like it.
That has a nice ring.
I,
Ambassador of Ankeny. Yes.
I like that a lot.
I like it. It just rolls. That
Yep.
has shirt material.
And then we have AEA Buseman over here. Chuck, tell him what's up.
Nice, nice. Chuck Buseman was up at West Hancock summer in '98 through the spring of '08, so a full decade. High school social studies, did a couple years in the school counseling realm, athletic director, taught some phys ed, a lot of combo positions, as is the case many times, but um, coach softball, girls basketball, assistant football, track and field. So variety of hats over the years, but super happy to be here. I'm currently, family and I live in Waverly, and I'm in my third year at Central Rivers AEA, and I work as a work-based learning coordinator. So I get to help students line up internships and job shadows and things like that to get them out in the community and get a little jump start on their future careers potentially.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you three on here. We're obviously missing a guy, Dave Fink. If he was around, he'd definitely be on here. He was one of the guys in the group with you guys that Coach Sanger loves so much. I told these guys before we hit record, talked to Kevin Sanger a little bit, and he said this group of guys meant a lot to him. You were kind of the quote outsiders. None of you guys are West Hancock or Britt grads, and you came in and you just embraced that West Hancock lifestyle and just Coach Sanger had a lot of good things to say about you guys, and for me personally, you were coaches of mine. Ben, you coached us in middle school, and I was your middle school girls basketball manager, if you want to call it that. And I think you just needed me to sit next to you so you could keep your sanity during some of those middle school
You
girls
sly
games. But
dog.
yeah, I just remember going, oh boy, he's got a tough job. He doesn't get paid enough for this. And then Coach Benning, Coach Buseman, you guys were, football coaches of mine, and never forget Benning whisper yelling at us against Lake Mills in '03 when we almost lost to a Ophir team, and Buseman, you and Fink coaching JV in '02, probably some of my favorite football memories, even more than varsity. I just really enjoyed that, just that kind of low key season with you guys. It wasn't the stress of varsity. We just went out and had a lot of fun and played hard. So a lot of good memories with you guys and Coach Fink. We put him through the ringer in freshman basketball, 6 a.m. practices. And so for me, it's just really excited to have you guys on here all together and tell some stories about Coach Sanger tonight. So, and I told them not to be nice to each other. So just expect some razzing, and we won't want anything different. So,
Well, I think this is where the ambassador takes over when in his politically correct role. Now he's going to say a lot of nice things, but he speaks so eloquently. He speaks for me. I'm just kind of a grunt. So Ben, take over because he was. I agree 100%, and I know Chuck was nodding his head when he was saying that too. And I know my wife would agree with what you were saying, Ben. So please say that again.
Prior to our getting on, Dan had talked about talking with Kevin today and being the 5 year anniversary and being kind of the outsiders, kind of know where you fit in and just so Bob to for Kevin to share that with you, Dan, that he enjoyed us, we appreciated us, because we certainly the same with him. It was just always, I think that's what made it a great place for us, is that we came into a place where we didn't know, and Bob embraced us and everybody else did too. We talked the Gopals and the Hagens and Eismans, and it was just always, I never felt like I was the outsider. I never, and any of us did. We always, it was fun to talk with our experiences. And, I think that's a true credit to Coach Sanger and his ability to establish culture and community, is just, I mean, I think that's the true credit of a man. And I think he did that. And, and that's why we're here today. So that's awesome.
you bet.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you say that, and I have this.
Mm.
I look at it every day. It's from Coach's funeral 5 years ago. I look at it and I think about him every day and the families, the Kevin was part of the team that kicked my rear end. In fact, I got it kicked a lot multiple times in one day. But um, all those guys, I think about them, and and Linda, I just remember her. She was so excited when we had Abby in 1999, and she was just so happy that she finally had a girl. she
Yeah.
she had all boys. She had four boys herself, and then she had Zach, and then we come in, and then we finally had a girl boy, Abby. That was incredible. And to build off of what Ben said, and I tell these guys too, if it wasn't for farming and the possibility of me moving back and working on the family farm, I'd be in Britt. I tell everybody that I'd still be in Britt. That I would be more than happy to call that home.
Mhm.
Definitely. Well,
Yeah, I just I think I mentioned this several times on the other podcasts that I did as well, but I just oftentimes think of like how friggin' lucky and fortunate I was, and probably you guys feel this way too, to kind of, fall ass backwards into a situation that we stumbled into, right? Like, I don't want to speak for you guys, but like, I didn't have any idea what I was getting into. I didn't really know the legacy of Coach Fink or Coach Sanger, or didn't know Coach Fink at the time, didn't know Coach Perkins, didn't know any of those guys. Took a job just because it was a job, but it didn't take very long to figure out that, hey, this is an unbelievably special place and a special time. And um, so I just think back on those days of how fortunate I was to just be part of all of that.
Yeah,
and
Chuck, I would agree. My first year as a high school principal, when Ryan was born, he was born premature. And so my first, I think, was it month and a half, Chuck, and I was out because he was in NICU. And I never forget Linda, I walked in there one Sunday. I think Linda and T were there, and they both pulled me aside and said, "We got you. We're gonna get ready. When you come back, we're ready to go." And for me, I'm 27 years old. It was just like that was to me was just a huge deal. And I feel that to my parents, to my just, and that's kind of how I've my own principalship. That's kind of how I've run my own legacy, I guess, was just that same the importance of the family and looking out for people. So I know this is about, lots of people, but that was I think just that whole culture piece that the Sangers created, West Hancock created for me was a tremendous.
15, 20 years later, since you guys have left, here we are, 2025,
Yeah.
getting together talking about it. That's just a cool testament of the culture
And
of the
I,
community.
I totally agree with Brian. There's multiple scenarios in which I could have very easily stayed in Britt, still be there today if if I, was invited back, but of course, you know, but yeah, phenomenal place, phenomenal opportunities.
Well, let's get this thing rolling here. I'm going to give a little background on Coach Sanger's career at Britt and at West Hancock. And I just want to mention I got my Mountain Dew for Coach. He always enjoyed his Mountain Dew. So in some of these episodes, I don't try to drink a pop at 7:30 at night, but I thought it was fitting tonight. So Bob Sanger became the head football and track coach at Britt in 1968, and he stayed there till 2019. He passed in 2020. In football, he had an overall record of 358 wins to 160 losses. And as you guys know, a majority of those losses came in his first 20 years. Once 1984 hit, losses didn't happen very often.
There's very
Uh,
few in our time, right, Chuck, Ben? Very few in
Right.
our time, like a handful.
Yep.
Handful.
Three state titles, 1973, 1996, and 2019. Four runner-ups, 86, 87, 93, and 2011, which Brian remembers the 86 runner-up team quite well. They beat Ackley Geneva 28 nothing in the semifinals. And my dad always tells that story about it was kind of blizzard-like conditions, freezing cold, and a couple Brit kids came out with nothing but their mesh jerseys on, and Or you said in the one podcast, you're like, yeah, we were pretty much done once we saw those guys run out there in short sleeves. It was a different breed of
I
cats.
got the same scars. I look at the same scars every day.
The Kelly brothers and the Finch brothers got the best of you that day.
Oh yeah, name them. No, actually, I think it was Hagen, Vance,
Vance,
and it
yeah.
wasn't Bahuji who was the right guard. Hagen and the right guard just freaking toyed with me, just pounded me, and then Vance still laughs at it. Vance is ha 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 ha. Ha. I'm like, I'm just yeah. They treated me like a rag doll.
Coach had
And honestly,
30,
I'm still a little upset at them. They should have won. They
yeah,
should have beat those guys.
12-7 was that final against Linville
Yep.
Sully. We
But
lost that
now
game. Yep.
I did gain a little favor from Vance and the that team. I wrestled the Linville Sully's um, fullback Kirby Skull, who was the All-State fullback linebacker for Linville Sully at state wrestling, and I pinned him right in front of his coaches. I got a great photo somewhere. He got him ended up in a headlock right in front of his coaches. So I got a little favor from those guys, but yeah, that was a serious butt whipping.
Little payback.
Brian, you want to talk about the time we did take down for a buck and I won with you? Is that this episode? Is that later on, or was that going to happen?
Sounds like right now.
No,
Same
I'm not.
thing. He was mouthing off, headlock, done, right in front of Melissa. It was easy. It was easy.
And my wife has never looked at me again the same way, Ben. That was the night that the love
Right.
left the Benning house right there.
Yep, that's how that works.
So wasn't Brian a state champion in high school?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Britt, that's no big deal. I heard you mention Lois Conway. Chuck and Lois are my neighbors. Chuck
Yep.
was a two-time state champ, 53 and 54 or something. Hi, Lois.
50,
Listen.
55, 56. Yep.
Yeah,
No,
something like that.
56,
I'm like, yeah,
57. Yep.
I'm nothing when it comes to Brit standards, but yeah, I mean, yeah, but yes,
I
there
was just
was one.
saying the assistant Ankeny superintendent took down a state champion wrestler.
He punched me in the nose too.
And
That
he was
was
from
fun.
Garrigan. Garrigan didn't even have a wrestling
I
program.
know. That's the worst part of it. How's,
Hey, when you're an athlete, Dan. I mean, you just can't. That's how that works.
Yep. Those golf schools, they just crawling with athletes.
Chuck is getting thick.
it
I'm
might be
just
a
sitting
good
back
thing we're not
listening,
together.
man.
It might be a good thing we're not hanging out much anymore.
Yeah.
I would agree. I would agree.
At the Fink Golf Tournament, it's going to get real this fall. So,
It does. Yeah, that's a good time too. Yes.
yep, I'm glad I got to go this year.
Yeah, there will be takedowns on the ninth green.
Yeah,
I'll be in the corner coaching.
I'll be
Nice.
stretching, and then I'll just run away. I don't need to get myself
It
involved
sounds
there.
like the potential for a fundraiser of some sort.
A Britt alumni wrestling tournament would be pretty fun to watch.
Right?
Oh.
Yeah,
Well, you don't even need to wrestle. Just get around and talk.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's something in the works for that coming up, by the way. So,
There's enough manure that'll be slung in that
yeah.
conversation, which I got story. I got a guy down the hall, Dave Price, who went to Simpson College. So he knows Vance and Travis.
Oh boy.
And I heard a story just the other day. He tells me stories all the time. He just laughs. He just laughs. Oh, the Hagen boys. Oh, yeah, I know those guys. And he said it would not be unusual to come back in between classes. He goes, when I did go to classes, I'd come back from class and the Hagen boys were playing a cribbage game. And next thing I know, I'm walking down the hall and the remote comes flying out in the hall and you hear Vance hollering at Travis, cuss, 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 get out, cuss, cuss, more cussing. So Dave walks down and says, hey, is there some way we can work this out or something? And, or what's this all about? And Travis just goes, yeah, he cheated at cribbage or something, or I beat him at cribbage or something. So Vance told him to get out. So Travis did the old, and Dave tells a great, he said, just like a little kid, Vance told him to get out of his room. So Travis went and stood in the doorway and put his arm in the door. I'm out of your room. I'm not in your room. I'm not in your room. I'm not in your room. And he said it got colorful and physical.
Shocking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, this is gonna be great because it's like we're not gonna get through any of the notes, and that's perfect because
No,
it's just gonna be awesome.
no.
Coach Sanger made 30 playoff appearances, 19 conference or district titles, and he was runner-up 15 times. So 34 of his 52 football seasons, they were in the top two in the conference or the district. Um, Again, he got his 300th win in 2011 in the Dome. Um, Picking up his another 25 wins like every couple of seasons. He was just racking up win after win. And some might argue he was even a better track coach than he was a football coach. In track and field, in 51 seasons, he won four state titles: 1974, 92, '07, and '08. And he was runner-up four times: 1973, '77, '79, and '95. His teams were in the top 10 at state 20 times, which is just unbelievable. His athletes won 30 state championship relays, individual events, or field events, with dozens and dozens of runner-ups as well. So those are sports accolades, things he accomplished in 52 years on the field or the track. But we all knew Coach Bob Sanger is more than just a coach. He was a teacher, he was a role model, he was a mentor, he was a friend to us. Um, Loved and respected him and Mrs. Sanger. So yeah, we're going to talk about sports, but that sports is just an avenue to all the things we're going to be talking about. So just going to tell some stories here. Chuck, you alluded a little bit like you didn't really know exactly Britt West Hancock prior to getting your job. What were what did you guys know about West Hancock and Bob Sanger before you got to Britt or Kanawha?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said before, not a lot. I was familiar to a certain extent. Trying to remember the exact years of Nate Smith and Randy Thompson,
91
you
to
know,
94. Yep.
91 to 94. So, like, I was coaching high school track down here in the Cedar Valley at Denver at that time. So, from the state track meet, I knew of like Nate Smith a little bit, so I knew that West Hancock had some pretty good tradition in track and field. But no, honestly, when I got to pulled into Britain in the summer of '98, I didn't know much about the football program. I had never coached football before. I didn't really know Coach Sanger or Mrs. Sanger. Got to meet him for the first time, when I was there interviewing. But also, like I said before, it didn't take long to, start to understand, hey, these are some people that they're not just, great coaches of athletes. They're mentors, very willing. Coach Sanger was very willing, like immediately to take me under his wing, give me a little bit of guidance. And, there was a lot of actually, we'll call them seasoned teachers at that point in time, right? That had been around for quite some time. So that was just kind of the culture of the building. But being a track guy, it was really easy for me to gravitate towards coach and spend a ton of time with him. And I think back to those first few years that I was there, even before we had kids, just some of the times that I value the most were the times that really didn't have anything to do with sports, but opportunities just kind of sit around and listen to him talk about life and values and things outside of sport that just helped me to be eventually I hope a pretty decent father and husband and things of that nature. So
Hey, Chuck, did you ever ask him a question?
did I ever ask him a
Yeah,
question?
just like, hey, what do you think? What in this situation? What do you think a guy should do? Did you ever give him any of
I
those?
asked him those kind of I asked him those kind of questions all the time.
And did he ever give you an answer?
Um, I mean, he spoke and he gave answers, but here's the thing about Coach Sanger. He was wise enough and savvy enough that he was a guide, right? He was that true guide. Like he wasn't going to tell you how to do things or well, unless you run bootleg pass on 3rd and 18
Right.
in your first JV game that you're ever coaching, and then he would tell you what to do and what not to do. But
Run the ball.
when it came to the really important stuff, though, like he wasn't going to tell you exactly,
No.
You need to do it this way, but he was that true mentor and that true sage that was able to, guide you with his words to help you develop your own thoughts about things.
Right.
That we're going to lead you in a very positive way.
I just remember being upset because I wanted an answer, and he would always answer my question with another question.
With another question.
God dang it. Come on, man.
Yep.
I mean, should I go this way or should I go that way? And then he would just, well, what's best? What are the options here? And it's like, no, just give me an answer. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but give me what you think.
Well, I have an example. He gave me a couple answers a couple times. Like when I was in Kanawha, I ran the shotgun, and he told me not to do that again.
Probably a very similar response as the bootleg pass throwback.
And Dana said we can't say some words, so I think Rick Willard ratted me out, and maybe Muth ratted me out when I got back to after that. Yeah, so we didn't run the shotgun anymore. So yeah, he was pretty explicit with me. I understood it. I understood where he was coming from.
What's the shotgun? I don't know what you're talking about. What's that mean?
Danny, I laughed my tail off on your was it a Twitter or something you put out. What did West Hancock kids do?
The Iowa chill
pregame tailgating at a college game.
The semifinals this year, we beat Madrid, and we did not attempt a single pass. I think we had like 430 rushing yards, 0 for 0 passing. And Iowa chill, the social media thing, they put when West Hancock people go to a tailgate and people are throwing the football around, do they just stop and work on their handoffs?
That's awesome. I loved it.
That was great. Yep. But what you guys just described though with Coach, I think back to his pep rallies. He would start with tomorrow night we're playing Eagle Grove, and then he would shift to something else, and you'd be like, I have no idea what he's talking about, but I would jump off a cliff for this guy, or I would go to battle for this guy. And at the end, he's got kids and adults in that gym just so fired up and just ready to do all the things. And it was like he would never just directly tell you something sometimes, but
you're supposed to pick it up. That was your job.
You knew exactly what he was saying, and you got the point, and those are incredible. Always remember those. Like I don't know completely what's going on, but I am mesmerized and I am excited and I'm ready to go to battle. So he just had a way of doing that, and I can't even describe it. So yeah. So when you got into coaching with him, one, you learned that we run the ball in Britt and Kanawha. But what was that like just getting started? Like Chuck, you said you've never coached football before. Scared to death to make a mistake, or did he give you that autonomy to figure things out? How'd that look?
No, I think he was, I don't know if autonomy is the right word, but, he had this ability, again, to lay the foundation for you. Like I wasn't scared, but at the same time, you wanted to do well for your athletes, but you also wanted to do well for him, right? I think there's a lot.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And not just because, but you knew very quickly, hey, this is a person that I need to listen to, that I can learn a ton from. And by doing well, that's one of the things that you can do to support and to honor like the effort that he's pouring into us. Like him and a lot of the other coaches that we had an opportunity to encounter in those early years poured so much into us that the value of that cannot be understated. So those first couple of years, like I swear to God, our offense was so simple, but I did not have a clue what I was doing. Right. But he always took the time to make sure to explain things. And like Ben said, sometimes it was very candid and it was very pointed for sure, but always took the time to make sure that you're growing as an individual. That's going to help our program, but he always in the back of his mind, I know this now. He was more interested in me growing as a man and as a person. So valuable.
You
Dan,
say
I would
that
say
too.
too. Go ahead, Brian.
Just to piggyback off of Sanger, I mean, I got to follow Gene Perkins.
I was just going to ask about that. You had a little different situation.
Yeah, I mean, I was involved in football. I was a head coach coming in to be just an assistant that first year, and then Gene was retiring, so it was basically handed to me. And then, boy, did you talk about pressure? I mean, gee willikers. I mean, these guys have been together through thick and thin, and they knew what each other were thinking. They didn't even have to look at each other, and they knew what they were thinking. I'm just like, man, the standards, the athletic standards here on the football field were, I loved it. I wanted to live up to it. That was my expectation. That's why, I'd go home after supper or go home after practice, have supper and come back and watch film and do everything necessary. But, Perkins was the same way. They always seemed to be able to ask me the right question. They always seem to be guiding you, both of them. And Perkins, I mean, I just remember Perkins had a hand about this big too. Bob had the sausage fingers, and Perkins' hands are about this big, and I remember him being left-handed, and why that stands out, I don't know, but it just, Coach Perkins meant a lot to me, and he's just like, I asked him, I'm like, am I doing things right? He goes, I don't care, you're the coach now, I'm like, well, am I wanted some realization or confirmation that I'm at least going the right direction. And Perkins was just like, I don't know, you're doing, yeah. Did you win the game? Yeah. All right. Did they score? Yeah. Well, then you got something to work on. Okay.
Coach Benning, I'll never forget my junior year, '03. So that would have been year last year at Britt, last fall, football season. The year before, with Ryan Pritchard's group, Taylor Van and Weinboom's group, we had to play Eldora New Providence in the first round, and we beat them by, I was like 27-14.
We're
They had
behind at half.
they were all juniors. And
Yep.
we knew the next year, like, if there's one team we don't want to run into, it's ENP. And then who, of course, when the pairings come out at like 11 o'clock at night, it was Eldora. And I remember a couple of us talking, like, if we squeak out a few more wins, which that's all we did that year was squeak out close games, we make the playoffs, we're probably playing Eldora again. If we play them, high school kids, like, it's not going to be good. We had that in our minds. I hate to say it, but we did. And then, the pairings come out, you guys go exchange tape. I remember the next morning we had to be back at like 8 something in the morning for like a walkthrough. Just dropped my notes. And you were sleeping on the couch in Coach Sanger's office, or the side office. I can't remember where that couch was. And I didn't think much of it. I was like, well, he was watching film or something of it. But later, like years later, I was like, they had to have known too. Like, Eldora was gonna take it to us pretty good. But you guys still did, you did your due diligence. You put your time and your effort in. You watched the film. You did the scouting report. And I just years later, I appreciated it more. Like, even though we kind of knew what the outcome of that game was going to be, you guys poured everything into every week of the season, every single year is what I.
Oh, we thought we could win. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't play the damn
Yeah.
game. As coaches say, why even play the damn game if you're not even just going to just give them the
Yeah.
damn trophy?
Yeah.
Um,
But on the
but
flip side too, like my senior year, you weren't there for, Chuck was, we were playing all these teams that we were up by 60 at halftime. You guys were still putting the same effort into each one of those weeks, knowing we're going to win by 50 just by showing up. You guys were doing the same in any way. It didn't matter who the opponent was. It was just the effort and time you guys put into the program was just unbelievable to me.
well, it's the expectation.
Yeah.
That's just what it was.
Yeah, I think that's just the standard and the culture that was created, long before any of us were there.
Yeah.
And we were just, to a certain extent, cogs in the wheel there that helped it go around for sure. But I mean, that was just the reality of it. It didn't matter who the opponent was. And Coach was so eloquent with that. His pregame speeches and his halftime locker room speeches, stuff like that. Like, he always had the ability to just remove any of those thoughts
Yep.
from the athletes and the coaches from their minds, whether it was a thought of, we're going to kick the crap out of these guys because they're not very good, which, that's an honest thought that some kids and coaches might have, or
Yep.
if it's, we're going to get blasted. Either way, he had a way of just removing any of those thoughts and say, hey, it doesn't matter any of that stuff. We just got to go out there and play our game and do the best that we can,
Yep.
and let the chips fall where they may.
Hey, Dan, I want to go back to one thing that Chuck talked about. You asked Chuck about if he felt intimidated with coach. And, my second year in Kanawha, I was the head middle school or junior high coach. And he knew I didn't have a great concept of the offense. And he sent, I think Chuck, you were there, Fink was
Mm-hmm.
there, Key was there. I mean, they're coaching me up on how to understand. I even think he was there for a game and helped me call plays. You have a Hall of Fame coach calling plays for a seventh or eighth grade game. Just, so that I think about when you had that question about Chuck, I think about that. That was just I'm like, holy moly. That's a great, understand just how do you build a program? And
Yes.
so I think that to me was just when he did that, I was just like, I was intimidated as hell when he's there next to me in the sideline. I'm calling a play. He's like, why are you calling that? And he tells me why. Why I mean, just, but it was just yeah, it was and the kids loved seeing him on the sideline that time. And I just remember that. It was just a cool experience for me. And but just it increased my commitment to him to him, as a leader. That to me, that was awesome.
Yep. Ben, my favorite middle school football memory with you, 200 Greg. Do you remember giving the ball to Greg Wilson on the 2-point conversion
I
towards the
do.
Oh,
game?
Yes.
yeah.
Yep. Greg was, big kid, and we're like, we're gonna get that ball in his hands, and it was literally 10 of us pushing him and 11 of them pushing him back, and the refs probably should have blown it dead for.
Well, he was a big kid, Dan. He was like 6'8", like 320. I
A
mean,
soft-hearted guy, good-hearted,
yes.
Yep.
For sure.
good-hearted kid.
I'm glad Timmerman was the referee that game. I think he blew the touchdown, I think, for that one.
Yeah, forward progress had stopped, and they just let it. It was probably a 15-second play. It was just
That
like
was
Love
a tug of
that kid.
war, but yeah.
the original tush push,
Yes, I should
right?
coin that. I should coin that, Charles.
See?
Uh, there was a lot of pushing going on there. So, yeah. What else is going through your mind when we talk Coach Sanger here? I put some stuff from when I played, but
I
um,
just remember, the being on the headsets. Chuck was upstairs,
Yeah.
and it was illegal to have the headsets on on your ears in the huddle, and we always had the team stay on the field. So the coach would go out there, but you couldn't have it on because you couldn't take coaching from upstairs. So I just drop it down, and we had an open mic, and I'd be out talking whatever defensive stuff and this and that, and I could hear Chuck saying, "Don't forget about this. Don't forget the counter. They haven't run the counter yet." And then it was like, all right. So Chuck made me look like a freaking hero. Hey, oh yeah, we haven't seen the counter yet. Don't worry about that. And I'd put the headset back on and come back to the sideline, and Chuck would just say, "I love listening to you in the huddle."
all the whisper
Good
yelling you
times.
did to us,
What's that?
all the whisper screaming you did at us.
Oh yes. Don't give them the satisfaction. Don't
Oh,
give them the satisfaction of knowing that I'm upset.
we knew it. Lake Mills, my junior year,
Yeah.
2003, we're down like 19-6 going into the fourth quarter. We were 6-0,
Oh
they
yeah.
were 0-6 or 7-0, 0-7, and I've never seen someone be so mad but so quiet at the same time and also get his message across. It was
Yeah, we
terrifying.
were in deep duty that night.
Yeah, and we came
Deep
back and
duty.
won by a point somehow. It was unreal.
Deep duty.
Yeah.
Deep duty. In
Did
fact,
a
they
lot of
still
that.
Lake Mill still has the record for the like tied for the longest record, and it's got to be the longest record. I mean, in
99
reality,
yards pass. Yep, it's tied
yeah,
with
the 99 and 2/3 yard touchdown pass. The
on third down too, wasn't it?
south end, they threw it going. They threw the ball
Yep.
north. Yep, down the sideline, and they I don't. Yeah, we sacked him. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, now you're bringing up some. Now I won't sleep tonight. Damn it. Um,
Break out the
but
film.
I'll wake up shaking my head.
Oh, yeah,
Damn it.
you were not happy.
Yeah, no, that was not a fun night. That we could have done better.
Yeah. And we won the game, and I remember just getting on the bus and we were all like, okay, that happened. Most teams would be thrilled to have a come from behind win. We were not so much that night.
Right. And I just remember when things would get heated, or I don't know if it was his way to like clear his mind or just kind of reset, but he always had his hair. And I just remember him at some point in time taking his hands and
Oh
just
yeah.
rubbing his like this and then putting his hands down. Okay, it's just all right. Then walking in and I just remember him doing that. And I'm just like, God dang, I don't know if that's a nervous tick or what, but I just remember him shaking his head and moving on. But that was one of his gimmicks or something to himself. I don't know.
Yeah. Coach Muller, you're a Garrigan guy. We had a couple good battles with Garrigan in the years you were there. What
Yeah,
do you
where'd your heart
remember?
really lie in those? The truth comes out now. It's 20 years past, 25 years out now.
Yeah.
Where did your loyalties really lie, Ambassador?
Well, I mean, obviously your home school, you want to do well. They want to do well, but I just we had a great, we really we love Britt, love West Hancock, and I mean, I remember playing against Garrigan. I was in the booth with Chuck, maybe Chuck, and we were walking up the stands, and I was getting just harassed by like everybody under the sun, and I think. I don't know. We really enjoyed our. So I'm gonna be I'm gonna be friends here a little bit and just be for Switzerland, Brian, and just be like, I really wanted West Hancock. That's what I was part of. That's what. And I didn't really have any. I had one time I had a cousin that we played against, um, but other than that, I mean, we embraced West Hancock, and that's who we were, and. I still get grief from everybody about still I'm to this day. So my brother, his son is a senior. I think they play on Friday, Dan, and
I couldn't tell you right now off the top of my head.
I know Garrigan plays West Hancock on Friday, and so he's like, you should come there. And then my youngest nephew is a he'll be a freshman, and yeah, so I get those all the time. But during that time, we just certainly loved West Hancock, loved it, and it was and I knew the kids, and we wanted to be successful. That's who I think that's who it
Well,
was.
speaking of Garrigan, the overtime win that Darin Carlson picked off the pass in the south end zone,
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I kept that football. He ran over and handed me the football that had Bishop Garrigan on it, or Garrigan Bears or something. It's burned into it. I kept that in locker in the coach's office, and I gave it back to him as a senior present.
Oh, nice.
Carlson, if you're listening, I hope you put that on the on your mantle, Darin. I hope that's on your mantle, that you look at it every day and you remember that end zone pick that you had it in overtime
Yeah.
to win the game.
And Carlson Drainage is a sponsor tonight. That
That's
orange
right. That's
logo
why
up
I'm saying
there.
it. I heard you mention it.
He's not
There you
on
go.
Facebook or anything, but I'll every quarter or ish, I'll go through some sponsors and stuff, trying to just get the next episodes going. And I'll text Darin and say, "Hey, you want to do more?" And he goes, "Let's do it." And he'll send some money into the fund and just never
but I
turns
think
it down.
Brian too and Dan that made it kind of fun too.
Yeah.
Kind of our even Coach Sanger. I mean, he loved to give me grief. I mean, Perkins. I mean, everybody gave me. I mean, Denny Brom, Timmerman.
Oh yeah,
Everybody gave me crap about that, and that was just kind of, I give it right back to him. That just kind of made it a fun. It was fun. I mean, that was part of
it
it.
was. It was all good fun. Yes,
It was all
absolutely.
good fun, and yeah. So I think
And
that too is you could say there was not a lot of. I think Dan, one of your comments, you said they were not great friends, but it was a fun experience for us to go through it and the old shotgun experience too. That was awesome and yeah. So it's I don't admit that it was a good time.
yeah. And like my junior, that '03 game, Benning was talking about something about in the paper that week, Wadley, Coach Wadley, something about, Britt's ranked number one. We should be number one. So there was some heat going into the game, and afterwards, whatever got said, got said. But I always knew, after the fact, they said there's mutual respect between those two programs and the two coaches. But what got me was when Coach passed away 5 years ago, Garrigan came to Britt to play West Hancock in basketball, and the Sanger family was there,
Yeah.
and the place was packed. And the Garrigan girls with Audie Crooks, they came out wearing Sanger shirts. I think
Oh,
someone
wow.
put Sanger on their shoes, standing ovation. Boys
Yeah.
games gets going, same thing. They come out in Sanger shirts. So it's just, rivalries aside, and
My niece is on that team.
yeah, it's just that I wasn't
Yeah.
there that night, but just seeing stuff on Facebook and whatnot, that was pretty cool for, rivals to come together and, you know,
Well,
That's
I always know that Bob wanted to have a fight or a battle. He wanted to have a good game. He wanted to
yeah,
win, but he
right.
hated blowouts and like nobody got better. We didn't get better. They didn't get better. He always wanted to have a good game where he could measure and say, "Hey, we got better doing this." And rivalry or not, he wanted to get better.
Yeah. That's the value of sport too. It's like
Right.
you should
Right.
have those rivalries in
That's what
between the
it's about.
lines, right? But there's things that are bigger than those rivalries, and those are two like life lessons that you can learn in one situation. And that's, you know, sport has so many things that can offer a person as they grow and they understand and they learn, and that's definitely one of them. I mean, you need to be that, you need to have that intensity of a rivalry, but you also have to understand that there's some things in life that are a little bit bigger than the rivalry, and you can support that too. So kudos to Garrigan for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Garrigan.
yeah. Benning, you were the first to leave, Britt, uh, spring
That
of
was not by
'04.
choice, Dan. He was asked to leave, actually.
Yeah,
So it was,
Peer pressure.
that's why you walked out with those cardboard boxes. It's all making sense now. Yeah.
I'm not going to return that stuff, guys. I'm just it's not coming back.
Yeah.
Ah,
School was in the red for several years because of you. It took a while to get back in the black. So
And the worst part is none of it fits anymore.
how Benning left first, and then I think what year you and you and Chuck about the same time, '07, '08 when you guys left? Is that
I left the year before Chuck.
okay?
Is that
mhm.
right, Chuck?
I was 08.
Yeah, I was 7.
Yeah. How hard was it to leave? And I'm sure there was a conversation with Coach Sanger leading up to and during. What do you remember about that time, those times?
It was just hard. I remember it was difficult, but in true Sanger fashion, he says, "Yeah." He says, "If I could be farming, I'd be doing it too." Because
Yeah,
he owns him and Linda owned what 60 or 160 or 80 acres around the house there. He's like, I would love to do it. He says, I'm jealous. Why don't you coach and I'll go farm for you? And so it was just like, hey, farewell, thanks. I loved it and whatever else, but he kind of made it like he was a little bit jealous. Um, the opportunity to come back and be with my family and the kids to see their grandparents and all that stuff.
yeah.
And he appreciated that. But he wished me well. He's like, yeah, thanks for your time. And then, yeah, you'd be crazy not to.
For Dan, for me, when I interviewed in Ankeny, I came back and had to get an offer, and Bob had stopped at my office, and he had heard I've interviewed, and he's like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't know if I can do it." My confidence kind of down. He's like, "Well, Ben, that guy puts his pants on one leg like you do. Why would you not take that gig?" I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you think about your family. He's all about family. Think about your family, think about your future. And so fast forward that to this week, the same damn thing happened. I had interviewed for a job. I'm like, didn't have a lot of confidence. And Bob's in my ear. Like, that person puts his pants on just like you do. Why the hell wouldn't you at least apply for the damn job? So I
Exactly.
think about that, and as a grown ass man, you're like, shit, that's that's the true legacy of a person, for me. So that I think this whole thing today was when I was preparing for this, I was like, God, it happened 18 years ago when I left, and from my new adventure, it was like, holy shit, it was you know, yeah. So
It
that
kind of ties in nicely,
answer your
doesn't it?
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
To answer your question, it was hard, but Coach Sanger and Timmerman and some of those others that I really respected made the decision a little bit easier. Like they made it easier for me to make that hard decision. right? Just like these guys, you got reasons why you're leaving a place that you've been for a decade that you really love.
They're the reason why that they made it difficult to leave.
That's
They're the
exactly
ones.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I was getting at. I just not very eloquent with my words, but
We're not Ben
you
Muller,
know,
and we're not.
that's true.
But you are AEA, so pick up your pace.
Easy now, easy. No, but coach, he made it easier on me. He made it okay, and confirmed with me that hey, it's okay. You're making adult big boy decisions that need to be made, and it's fine, right? Super supportive, but that doesn't mean it wasn't hard.
One thing I always think about with Coach Sanger, I have in the notes here, he rewarded his seniors and he rewarded loyalty. Um, there was a lot of kids that went out for football. I mean, especially when you guys got there, like 98, we were a 2A school and there would be 60, 70 kids out for football. Now it's, we're still doing well in the 40s, low 50s sometimes, but there'd be a slew of seniors that would hardly ever see the field. Nowadays, why bother going out if I'm not going to play? I'm just going to quit. Kids would stick it out for 4 years because they wanted to be in that program with coach for all those years. And he always found a way to reward them, whether it was at practice or in a game or senior night or whatever, or at the banquet. He would talk about the kid that played 2 snaps the whole season just as much, if not more, than he talked about the kid that was an all-stater. Um, I just think that's just something that sticks out in my mind. I'm sure you guys saw that all the time, helping him and assisting
I
him.
just remember he prided and he took great pride in the fact that the scout team executed almost better than a lot of times it was better than our opponents. But the look that they gave us, I mean, I'm trying to think the oldest Whitty. What was his name?
Tyler.
Tyler.
Cody.
Cody. There you
Cody
go.
Tyler was there was one Cody. Cody was the quarterback on the scout team, and I mean he did a heck of a job, and he was our backup quarterback,
Yep.
and it was just he embraced it, and Sanger, and he got to be now during practice when they were going on the defense, he was on the other side of the ball. He was behind. So I don't even know what was going on over there, but he was doing something. And I was on the defensive side, shuffling guys in and figuring things out. Hey, run that again, whatever else. But I just remember that was a true mark, and that meant so much. And I know he talked about it all the time, but I can't tell you enough that that means something. From
Right.
from the defensive side of things, that means something that to get a good look. And I know he embraced that. And we always did. We always said, hey, we got the best scout team in the country.
Right.
Coach
It
Benning,
was always
do you know who the quarterback is going to be at West Hancock probably this year? Cody Whitty's son, Cohen.
No kidding.
Yep,
All
he
right.
was the
Good for
backup this
him.
last year as a sophomore, and
And I hope to God Cody's embracing every minute that he had in football when he was with us.
yep,
Because I loved him. I loved all those guys. It was great. He did a great job. He contributed to the team. He made us better, and he even played some defense for us. But God dang, that's awesome. That is awesome. Congratulations, Cody.
yep,
yeah,
yep.
that's cool. I was just going to say too, there's so many of these like parallel like life lessons as well. Like coach always used those kind of scenarios to talk to kids about life lessons. Like life is not fair, right? Not everybody's going to be a starter. Not everybody is going to have a significant role, but everybody's going to have a role. And we need all of you to whatever role it is that develops for you. We need you to do that the best that you can. And that's he always had that way of like turning it into a bigger lesson for the kids about like that's just the way life is too, guys. Like you're going to
Making
be
it
20
personal. He
years
made
from
it
now, you're going
personal
to
with
grow
every
up, it's going to be
kid.
20 years from now, and you're not all going to be CEOs. You're not all going to be ambassadors of Ankeny. It's there's going to be
That's for the
sorry,
select few.
I had to take the shot when I could there, but
Yeah.
it's just one of those like parallel lessons that he used to intertwine in there all the time, and sometimes kids didn't even realize it. That's the thing; they didn't even know that they were being exposed and really learning that until you really sit back and maybe think about it, like son of a gun. That's what that was about.
But
Well,
Chuck and Brian, I was in Kanawha, I think I was there for 4 or 5 years as the head junior high coach. He made me feel like I was the head goddamn varsity coach. Like he was supportive. I mean, he was so supportive of us, and so you never felt like there was a hierarchy. We all knew who coach was, and you know who the D coordinator and all. But he just so supportive of us from a lower level. You just always felt like you had that support.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so real that like you just said, Chuck. That's so important.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to piggyback off you, Chuck. I'm a fourth grade math teacher, and sometimes to get fourth grade kids excited about taking a math test is not the easiest task in the world because it's whatever. And I talk to my kids all the time. There's things, this is just what you're saying about Coach Sanger. There's things in life that aren't fun and you don't like, but you have to do it. I said, I'm legally obligated to have you guys take these tests. And I can find a way to motivate these kids to do their best on it with some rewards, and some is just like in life, whatever's in front of you, you just have to do your best. And it might be a fun thing, it might not be a fun thing. And I've said that for a couple of years now when I've finally kind of gotten in my gel, getting things going. And after the fact, you're like, that's probably something Coach Sanger said to me one time or dozens and dozens of times in a similar manner. And it's just the things that rub off that are now, yeah, 20, I'm 20 years out of high school, and I feel like stuff just kind of comes together, and a lot of it was my upbringing. And it wasn't just Coach Sanger, it was Jim Pauls and Bob Grangenet and Miss Troutman and Mrs. Sanger. We were just surrounded by people who were always making us or helping us choose to always do the right thing. So,
He had a way of making things personal and getting kids to believe it. I remember, Chuck, I know we were in Finks Blazer. We were going to play Ballard in the first round of the playoffs.
Oh, good. I'm glad that's the story you're telling about being in Finn's Blazer.
No, this is
All right,
this is
carry
football
on.
related. Yep. No,
Carry on.
We have to be PG. PG.
I know. I said PG Sanger is the rating
we,
for
we
tonight.
went to Webster City, exchanged tapes, and there's actually two stories to go with that. We didn't eat, of course, or whatever, and I remember we stopped at McDonald's or something, and a bag of chips. And Sanger was in the back seat, and I was in the passenger seat. Dave was driving, and I just remember somewhere along the way, Sanger he could eat like a machine. He was just a machine. He was like a combine, just and I just remember the whole big bag of chips just gone. And he's just like, "Gosh dang it! I don't think a chip touched my tongue." And just the whole bag was gone. And then so we're driving home still, and there was a critter going down the middle of the road, and Aaron Thompson running back. I remember the critter was moving, kept its shoulders square, and it was still making ground, and it's still taking ground, and it was still getting upfield. And it's like, oh man, I'm like, that thing runs like Thompson. He's doing a nice job. And bam, we hit it. It was a skunk. And oh God, it stunk like mad all the way home. And we get home and like, oh geez, that was so bad. But I was just like, Thompson, that's just how he runs. He's just doing it just smooth. He's just boom, this way and that way and forward and all the time. And then I remember we open the doors and we climb out and we look in the back seat where Bob sat. I don't think anything hit his tongue because half of the bag was on the floor. The chips were just everywhere. We're like, Bob, and I feel I still didn't call him Bob, and I probably called him Coach. Coach, no wonder he didn't taste any because it's all on the floor. You want to eat the rest of it? You want to take 10 minutes and clean up his, truck here? Oh, Jesus Christ! Just let me eat. Guy doesn't eat all day.
I want to hear the other story Chuck got worried about.
Well, there's probably multiple.
Yeah.
There's
I'll, I'll catch you next year at the golf outing on that
Yeah.
one,
Yeah,
Dan.
it's probably not for publication.
There we go. That sounds good.
Not for
Make the
public
people wonder a little bit. That's what we need. We know.
Leave them hanging, cliffhanger.
Yep,
cliffhangers. Yep,
exactly.
cliffhangers.
Um,
But also, Chuck, you remember when Coach Sanger sitting at the Commons table eating lunch?
Yeah.
It was like it was a competition. I mean, God dang, he would just stop talking and gone. He'd like bend up, gone.
Yep.
Coach, I'm like, can we talk? Well, yeah, we can talk now. I'm done eating. Well, of course you. I mean, he would just inhale. I'm like, I would really like to see you eat sweet corn, Coach. Just like, and he would laugh. Oh, and he'd give me the old shut up. And then, hey, Ben, you remember when, and Chuck, remember when Coach had the gout?
Yeah.
He had that leather shoe, that the white New Balance, because he had the big old wide hooves for feet. He had the shoe, and his gout was so bad on his big toe knuckle right there, he cut it out, and it's game night. So now he's coaching, and his feet are exposed, and his big swollen toes like a fist coming out of the toe. And I gave him so much grief about that. I'm like, "Are you kidding me? What did you?" And now,
what year would that have been? Do you know what? Remember what season?
oh God, no! But I remember it was a home game because I remember him laying on the couch in that back locker room with his foot up, just complaining, just not complaining, but it's like, ah. Oh, and then he would. Oh, Jesus Christ, my foot's killing me. And I look at him like, holy cow, that's not a foot. You got a baby stuck to it. It's just that big. He's like, shut up. And just, you'd have to ask Lynn on that. Hopefully the New Balance shoes, the nice, like high dollar leather New Balance shoes are still in the house somewhere.
Oh, geez. Um, so 5 years ago today, he passed the middle of the night, like 2 in the morning or so. What do you guys remember about that day when the news finally hit you that he had passed? How was that? And then I remember I saw Chuck. I know for sure I saw you at the visitation. What do you remember 5 years ago today? She
I
doesn't
just
seem
remember
like
hearing
5 years
about it.
ago.
I think Coach Wadley had reached out to my dad and had shared that he had Coach had passed. And then social media, I'd heard that, and then just for me it was like, okay, when can I show my respects? That was my big thing for me. Like, when can I get there and do that? So that was being removed for, almost 20 years. Like, I want to make sure and I get there for that. That was the most important thing for me.
Chuck?
Yeah. I honestly, I was trying to remember exactly how that morning and how the information transpired. I feel like I probably got a text from Francis, potentially. Um, that bothers me that I don't remember those details. But yeah, same deal. You're first of all, 5 years. Part of me feels like it was yesterday, and part of me feels like it was 25 years ago. That's just the way the mind works in these situations. But I remember spending most of that day trying to communicate back to Francis and Iceman and some of the others and these guys and just trying to reconnect. And I think a lot of that just comes from, again, that close knit group that this man had created, and we knew now that he's gone, like, we're all going to need each other here, just like the community. When we showed up at that visitation, yeah, and I remember seeing you there, Dan, but I knew it was going to be big, right? You just knew. I'd only ever been to another one of that substance, and it was Coach Thomas. The similarities, obviously, the circumstances very, very different, but anytime you've got a person that has that type of legacy and impact. It wasn't legacy, it's legacy now. That's the unfortunate part is, you think about all the things that happen after the fact. But the impact that that guy had on so many people, you just knew it was going to be huge. But you don't really, it doesn't register with you until you show up and you start making connections with the actual people and all the people that you knew, but realize that most of them you knew because of your connection to him, right? So those are the kind of things that I remember about that whole whirlwind of that day and in the days that followed.
Yeah, I just remember, thinking, he was so competitive. I mean, I just remember him on the golf course. We'd go to the Decker Sporting Goods golf outing at what was that? Where's that golf place at south of Algona? The flower pots around it, whatever. Anyway, he hadn't golfed.
Spring Valley.
Yeah, Spring Valley. He hadn't golfed forever, and I said, "Let's go golf." And then we golfed, and he was just so competitive, and he hadn't golfed in years. And the guy grabs a club and he smacks the thing down the middle of the fairway. I'm like, "You said you didn't golf." Well, I never didn't say I wasn't any good. He just said I haven't golfed forever. But and just his competitiveness, and I just remember thinking, all right, as competitive as he is at everything at life and wanting to be the best and just his standards that he held, I'm like, he must he's at peace. If he let go, if he didn't quit fighting, if he lost the fight, you knew just like his football games, he wanted to have competition. And he wanted a good fight and he hopefully he put his best foot forward and that damn cancer stuff, cancer had his hands full when they tried to whip Bob Sanger. But I just remember thinking, okay, he's at peace now. He's not here with us, but he's made his peace with the Lord long before this, and he's not fighting anymore. The fight's over, the game is over, it's done. The final whistle blew, and I just remember thinking, okay, he's at peace. It's because that was a tough fight, man, and it was amazing just to see him struggle through that and fight through it and be there. I got to sit with him during the title game in that north end zone of the dome, and it was. I mean, it was just amazing. I mean, you can go on and on about this, but I just remember in my mind, peace. It's we're good now. It's just we're good. That's it. It's over.
I remember that I was there. I was by myself, and there was like, it was Wadley was there. We had a guy from Frederick Parkersburg, Donkerton, AP was there, Emmitsburg was there. Just the amount of different coaches that just all and represented themselves and their gear. I think that to me that was a pretty cool experience of, just those coaches came from lots of places to show their respect for a guy that they competed against, hardcore probably multiple times and to be able to take that time out and do that and is I think was to me was just really eye-opening for that time.
Yeah. That 2019 title season, I couldn't go to the championship game. My sister got married down in Texas, and I had to burn all my personal days for that, and I've not quite forgiven her for that yet. But in my classroom, watching the game with my students, I said, if we get all our work done, we're watching the title yesterday. Tomorrow's the game. We get 2 days worth of work done today. You guys are just watching the game with me. And some of those kids were like, "You scared me, Mr. Kroll. Like you were so into that game." I said, "Guys, I've never wanted," and it wasn't just to win another state championship, put in the trophy case. It was like the timing of it all for Coach to get one more title. So badly want him to win, and I about lost it when we won that game. Tate Hagen ran that trophy down to the end zone to show it to him, and to me though, the coolest part was I think it was the next day they had a pep rally at school, and he got the mic, standing ovation, and he talked for about 20 seconds about winning a state championship, and the rest was talking about being a good person, being a good community member, being a good husband, the the typical Bob Sanger speech that was just ingrained in him. It's not about wins and losses as much as competitive as a guy he is. It was sending a message to these young kids to how to live. So
Yeah, I remember he was always he would be the captain of the ship. I just remember him giving the kids, placing so much responsibility on the kids. He said, "Well, if you want to be good, you'll be in the weight room. I'll see you next fall."
yeah.
And the kids would go. And if you want to win the games, you got to be in shape. We're not going to condition during practice. You better be in shape for the games. And they always were. And they took that upon themselves. And there was that team leadership. Kids would buy in. I mean, when I played in '86, they all had mohawks. And that came from Gene Perkins. Gene Perkins was that World War II guy for D-Day, get them all prepared. They all wanted to be the same, so they all shaved their head. They all wanted to be the same. They all gave up their identity to fight on Normandy Beach and all those other beaches. But Perkins, don't underestimate his contributions. He was the guy that taught that in class, and they all shaved their heads. They all came out of mohawks. I mean, that was the thing, and it was incredible that those guys would do that. And so Sanger given that saying it's your team, and then the kids in return saying it's our team. That's a two-way street. I mean, any coach can say that. Hey, it's your team. I'm here for the ride. I get a great seat in wrestling. I get to sit in the corner. But it's going to be your team, and honestly, I can see it in Mark too nowadays with the kids. It's their team. It is their team. They're leading the way. They're doing the things, and I was just always impressed. I'm like, well, shit, they're really doing it. The kids buy in. They're lifting. There's coaches in the weight room for them, but the kids show up because it means something to them, and that's Bob Sanger saying, "Hey, this is your program, not mine. It's just my name at the top of the list."
What other stories can you guys think of before we wrap this up? Any good fun stories? Because you were in your 20s and he was doing the math here, darn near twice your age at the time. So it was legendary Bob Sanger and a bunch of kids, helping him out. I'm sure you guys made him because when I was in high school, whenever I would do something stupid, guess who would be right around the corner to witness it? Coach Sanger. And I'm sure that happened to you guys on occasion every once in a while. You just be like, oh my gosh, like what else can you think of?
I think
Yeah.
I think he was smart enough to know to keep the distance. Um, because he
Until
didn't
he,
drink. He didn't drink. I mean, he
oh,
flat out said he didn't drink. That meant something to him. And I hate to say it, we partook. We actively partook, and that was kind of what we did as a younger group. Kind of the way it was, like you said, in our 20s. And um, he just said when he had to be gone, make sure the tape gets in the mail at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. But he was engaged enough, and then he also knew they're going to do their thing, and he would kind of fade away.
well,
So
he was he
don't be
was
too
so good. I was just going to say he was so good at you say keeping his distance in those situations, but like in coaching situations of creating a ton of autonomy with us as well, right? Like he empowered us, but he would keep his distance for the most part, once he kind of trusted the process and trusted that we didn't completely have our head in the sand.
And by God, you
Until
better get that film in the mail. By God.
right until he didn't want to keep his distance. I always tell the story of like when we were JV coaching, um, coach would always come to all the games, even the road games. He might get there a little bit late, but he would always be up in the stands or up in the press box maybe during the first half of the game. And you could always tell what coach was thinking and what his mood was, depending on if he came down and entered our halftime huddle or not. Because if things were going well and he agreed with what was going on, he would stay up there and keep chewing on his popcorn and having his Mountain Dew, and it was all good. But
Yeah.
with about 30, 40 seconds left in the half, if you were struggling at all, believe me, I was peeking over my shoulder to see if Coach Sanger was coming down out of the bleachers, because I knew if he was, um, yeah, he was going to get involved for sure. My best, and I think maybe I told this story the last time that I was on here, but my best example of that, we were up in Forest City for a JV game, and first half we were struggling a little bit, and this was I wasn't it wasn't my first year. It was probably second, third, fourth year, maybe. I don't know. I had plenty of reason to believe that I can call this offense and I can do things. And I was trying to probably be a little too cute. And at halftime, he just came down and he didn't say more than a dozen words to me, but he got the point across. He's like, "Hey, just run 245 dive until they stop it."
Yep.
Right. And we came out in the second half in the third quarter. I think we ran 245 dives, 16 plays in a row, and scored 3 times. And like, yep, that's a pretty good example of he gives you your autonomy and he keeps his distance until it's time not to, where he re-enters the conversation. But it's that balance that he was so good at, that made it so awesome to learn and grow underneath him. It was awesome.
Do you remember Forest City varsity 2003, my junior year at home? It was like 7-7, and then we got up by a score, and then it was probably the 10-yard line. We got the ball, and I was running in plays with Andrew Schmidt at right tackle, and it was 245 dive, 245 dive, and it was Derek Ing and Mitch Horseman.
Yeah.
Mitch and I would come in for a play, Schmidt and Ing would come in for a play, and it was just 245 dive. We got down to like the other 10, and I think Forest City had burned at least one or two of their timeouts trying to readjust to stop it. They had to have had 8 guys on that side of the line. And I'm pretty sure on the play we scored, I think he called a counter to Lance Hill or something, and just he could have done cartwheels to the other side of the field. But it was like 15 plays in a row, and he's like, he didn't even have to tell me and Andrew the play call. He just looked at us and nod like, "Yep, just
Go.
just do it." You know what? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was always one of my favorite memories because
Right.
Forest City was a lot bigger school, and they thought they had us that year, and it's like, no, we'll wear you out, don't worry. So
And
yeah,
Dan, from my perspective, a little bit different when I was the high school principal there in West Hancock, and I showed up at practice almost because I missed it. I missed seeing everybody be there, and he turns to me and says, "I've never had a principal come to watch practice," and he was just like, "That means a lot," and he just reinforced to me the importance of when your different roles. It means a lot to show ownership with your people that you're involved in. And so I think of that today too. And I remember that was West Hancock. We had, I think Michelle DeHart was the high school volleyball coach. I think Emily Pritchard was that senior year, and Aaron Ice. And we had those girls over for my house for supper. And just the relationships you have with kids is so important. And I think Coach had that with his kids, and he enforced that with his coaches. And I think when you hear this, when I listen to all your podcasts, you hear a lot about the coach's relationship with their kids. And I think Coach really started that environment and encouraged that environment with all of us. And so, when we talked when we golfed this week, or the last spring with the Dave Fink, last fall in the Dave Fink thing, it was so fun to golf with you and Brady and Tyler. And, it was kind of embarrassing I could outdrive you all. I mean, that was kind of weird, but
Well, ambassadors have time to do that.
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
yeah. So
administration.
I
That's all
think
they do.
a lot of his legacies are really about things of the untold, like the great teacher. You don't ever have experiences you don't know your impact until later on in life. And I think, as this podcast is a great avenue to show just the impact of the Sanger legacy. And so I think that's an awesome.
Yeah. Well, I asked on Facebook if some people could send me some stories or little snippets. Gerardo Ibarra, he would have been after your guys' time, maybe a freshman on your guys' last year. I can't remember exactly. He was a great football player, even better basketball player. He sent me a thing, said this isn't a story, but Coach Sanger very rarely ever talked to me about football. It was always a life lesson, a situation, something to reflect on. It was always about being the best person or teammate I could be, or just being fun and silly, having a good conversation. To me, that was the best things. He wasn't just a football coach, he was a mentor. And that he's one of the best athletes we've had in this school in the last 15, 20 years. And him just be like, it wasn't all business, it wasn't all X's and O's. It was just having a good conversation and teaching lessons. So
Well,
um,
I want to, on that note, I would like to, he was able to do a lot of those things and communicate and be who he was because of Linda.
mm,
I mean, let's be honest here. I'd like to know all the. I mean, Linda would is going to downplay it, but just think of it. I mean, you've talked to all the wives before, and in those situations, she's done that since 1969. And on, and just for her to embrace that and see the man that he was, and for Bob to see what Linda was, and man, what a great. I mean, that's like a perfect match. I mean, match made in heaven through and through. And hats off to Linda for being who she is and letting Bob be Bob.
yeah, well, I'm sure you
Amen.
guys know I'm the chairman for the West Hancock Hall of Fame, and so I get to be a big part of inducting these great people into our Hall of Fame. And Linda went in this last year, and I started in about January or February for August, just getting all the bios written up and how I want to present the people and do the stuff for the media. And I started working on Mrs. Sanger's last year, probably about this time. And I was like, this will be the easiest write-up I'll ever have to do. And I started, and I'm like, this might be the hardest write-up I've ever had to do because no one really actually knows exactly everything that lady did behind the scenes because she kept everything.
Raised four boys.
Yeah, well, I've heard some good stories at the Sanger farm. Yeah, just like, and I asked Kevin, I said, you got to help me make a list of all the things she was responsible for. She couldn't even remember some of the stuff because she just did everything. I'm like, I'm gonna try to do this lady justice, but I don't know if a one-page write-up for a Hall of Fame ceremony is even going to come close to doing that lady justice. She just the rock. And we're here talking about Coach, but man,
They're one and the same, man.
yeah,
You can't
And I
talk
think
about one
Dan,
and not involve the other.
I listened to that. I listened to that thing with Linda. It was one of the shortest ones that you had because they didn't want to be long. They wanted to be
yep,
quick and get out.
yep.
They,
I was
they
like,
were short. Like we
I'm,
all could have a talk. We got to do a podcast about Linda Sanger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and that just speaks to Linda, right? It's like you don't need to say it. You don't need to really talk about it. People just know it's through her
Right.
actions. Anybody that was breathing and paying attention knew that Linda Sanger was like the driving force behind a lot of things at the school, and walked hand in hand with Bob to make sure that things were running smoothly at home, things were running as smooth as they could at school. Um, yeah, you didn't have to be like super observant to realize that, right? Like
Right.
just by her actions, you saw it daily. Um, so easy to see.
well, like Ben, you were saying when your kid was in the NICU, you're like, I was there on a Sunday and Miss T and Miss Sanger were there. And I almost wanted to say, those two were at the school on a Sunday. That's shocking. Like, they were always
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
They
What
lived
day
there and
aren't
they were
they at
just so,
school?
so
What,
dedicated.
what
Just,
day aren't they at school?
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. Don't get me started on Miss T. She's one of my all-time favorite
Oh
people.
yeah, great lady.
No,
And
she's
I
been
no,
awesome.
one more story. I still always laugh that Coach Sanger would always he'd be telling stories about the boys growing up. And and I've said this before and I'll say it again, but I just laugh all the time. I mean, Kevin was in what, 89, 90 grad,
80, 89. Yep.
89 grad, and Mark was a 2000 grad. So there's like 10,
2001.
12 years difference in age, right? Well, Bob would always tell a story, and it never failed. He had to name all four kids. The first kid, and it didn't make any sense to me because Kevin was an 89 grad and Mark was a 2000 grad. So there's 11, 12 years difference. How can you screw that up? How can your life be that much of a shamble? You'll screw up 12 years. Like, it was Kevin, no, Jeff, no, Rick. It was Mark. It was Mark. And I'm like, how can you, what's the 12-year? How do you screw that up? I can understand the first two or the last two, but the first and the last? Come on, man. And he just like, oh, you just wait. He'd take that sausage finger and he'd just say, you just wait. You just wait. And he's right. He was right.
He was
Well,
right.
Brian, the last time I talked to Coach Sanger before he passed was probably right around Christmas, early January. I was making that record book and of the
He
Bob
couldn't name
Sanger
which
era.
kid it was. He couldn't name which kid he had, but he could name the running back from Northwood, Kansas in 1971.
This is where I'm going. I could not find the Garner game from 1969 if it was a home or an away game. That was his second year coaching, 51 years prior to this conversation him and I had. I called Kevin because he was home a lot with his dad when he wasn't doing well. And I said, "Hey, Kevin, are you sitting with Coach?" And he goes, "Yeah, Dad's right here. What's up?" And I said, "Can I talk to him real fast? Got a question for him." So he gets on the phone and goes, "Dan, what can I help you with?" Said 1969 Garner game. Was it home or away? And he goes, "Oh, that was an away game. We lost 30-0. Our starting tailback was out,
Yeah.
but their running back went for 160 on us, and they had this right tackle." And I'm like, wow. And Kevin goes, "Dad, when's my birthday?" And Coach goes, "Shut up, Kevin." And I said, "Hey, have a good night, Coach," and hung up. And that was my last conversation with him. That was perfect. Like, would not expect anything different. So, yeah.
That's
And
good.
my dad played for Buffalo Center in the 70s, and I wore 75 because that was my dad's number. In high school, we'd go, get a pass from one of you guys or coach to go watch film in his little office there, and we'd go into the vault and watch an old game. And I'm sitting there, and he walks in and sees what game we're watching, and he looks down at my jersey and he goes, "Did you wear 75? Because that's what your dad wore for Buffalo Center back in 77 and 78." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "He was a decent right tackle. He didn't have a great explosive first step, but he got enough in the way to get his head around on the right side. He let a guy get by him. He was a decent kicker, too. I think he made 2 extra points against us in 78." Like, I asked my dad that, and he goes, "It's like my dad's like, I drank in high school. I don't remember any of things." So because I don't remember if I made an
How
extra
cool
point
would
in a
it be to
game.
ask him, hey, when's Kevin's birthday?
Yeah. Oh man, just
You know,
he forgot more about football than I'll ever know. That's for
oh God.
Right.
You mentioned North Iowa. And Chuck was there, and I know Ben was there too, but it might have been the coldest game
my
in
sophomore year, 2002. I'm still mad at Buseman about that game.
Yeah, we told that story last time.
oh
Yep.
God, on the bus. Well,
It was cold.
fellas, we can do two things here. We can get the guys on the field that have practiced all year long and deserve playing time,
Yep.
or we can get off the bus and kick their ass. And whoa, kick their ass, kick their ass. We went
Remember
off
that?
there,
That's awesome.
picked
I
the
was I
defensive
was
line,
mad at Buseman though,
something.
because Buseman got to call the offense in the minute and 2 seconds of the second half that it was because we won
Yeah.
50-point rule.
Yep.
You came up to me and said, "Crawl, you're going in next play." And my family's all from Buffalo Center. That's all, both sides of my family are Buffalo Center people. And next play, go in. Well, you called, I think, like a 236 trap, and Justin Johnson went like 50 yards for a touchdown, game over. Did not get to touch the field that night, and I was so mad. And then my parents took Jake Moore to that game that night because he was just a freshman, not on the varsity. My grandparents were known for overfeeding people. They were in the restaurant business for decades. They took Jake to my grandparents' house for dinner before the game, and my grandpa overfed Jake to the point where Jake was in the fetal position on their living room floor and could barely make it to the game. I just remember we're going to Buffalo Center. I'm gonna get a play because we're gonna beat them handily. And then Chuck calls a touchdown run for Justin, and I didn't get in. And Justin let me know about that through college. That, remember when
Sure
you
he
didn't
did.
get a play
Hey,
against
great
North
friend right
Iowa?
there.
Yeah.
Great friend.
Yep, he is. So, yeah. Hey, I got a couple more
Sorry
little
about that,
stories
Dan.
here what was that?
No, sorry about that. I was just
Yeah,
apologizing one
thank
more
you.
time.
I, I'm over
Someday I'll
it.
make that up to you.
I'm officially over it now that we've
Okay.
been able to talk it through a couple times. So, yeah.
Okay. I feel
Gabe
better about
Brown,
that.
Gabe Brown sent me something. He said junior and senior year, him and Adam Brower grew out their hair. and Coach Sanger was not a big fan of the long
Oh,
hair.
drove him crazy.
Said he tolerated it, but then one game it got in his eyes a few times, and so he bought a white skull cap, Gabe did, and he wore it under his helmet, and right before a game he had his helmet off, and Coach Sanger looked at him and said, "If you don't take that off right now, you're not playing." He said that was the last time I ever wore that skull cap. He said that's all it took. And then Gabe said, on a more serious note, he said, I always told myself that sports in high school were supposed to be fun. I used it as an excuse to never apply myself fully. I never went to the weight room. I didn't achieve maximum results because I just wanted to have fun. I told myself I wouldn't have regrets about doing sports how I thought I should do them. He goes, now I look back and have regret not taking coach's words and challenges to heart. That regret shaped how I have approached fatherhood, my military career, and my civilian career. Coach Sanger's influence, while they fell on deaf ears of a knuckleheaded 15 to 18-year-old kid, built much of who I am now as a 40-year-old man. I'll forever be grateful for him for that, along with the other coaches and teachers I had. So,
Amen, Gabe Browns. Amen.
yep, Gabe's a good guy. I stayed in contact with him over the years. Dave Hewling, Dave played for Coach in the early 70s, and Dave is now the scoreboard operator for Iowa women's basketball. And so I'm a season ticket holder, so I go to all the games. So Dave and I have got to be buds over the last couple years. And Dave said in the whatever year, 72, I think he was, or 74, I can't remember. It's like Dave was bragging up to coach that he's gotten to be a pretty good extra point kicker and we should kick extra points in games. And Coach Sanger told him, if you make one extra point in a game, I will buy you a car. And Dave said, I practiced even more. I got so excited about getting better at extra points. He said, we went for two that entire season. We did not kick a single extra point. So um, he goes, I'm pretty sure he did it on purpose. Like, remember, there were some situations where it would have made sense to just go for one, and I'm pretty sure he had that on his mind. So just had that good sense of humor. But
Awesome.
and then the last thing I have from someone, this is from someone who wishes to remain anonymous. All this person sent me, besides please don't say who I am. Coach Sanger paid for all of my books through college. That to me was like, wow,
Wow.
like what a guy. I just when that person sent that to me, and it literally was just that that like I thought that would be a perfect.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
Yep, last thing I wanted to say at least tonight. So as we wrap this thing up, thanks again to my sponsors. I didn't even count them. There's 25 of them plus up there. People that wanted to give. Again, if you can go out to sangerstrong.com and throw $5 into that pot, whatever you want to give, that's going to go a long ways to give back to the communities of Britt, Kanawha, and West
How
Hancock.
much is it? How much is it, Danny? I'll tell you what. I'm on board with you. What's a lifetime sponsor?
$400, and it gets you on every episode ever. So. Yep, and I plan on doing this for a while still. I just every time I sit down and go, who should I interview next? I just
Sanger
feel like I
Legacy.
have a never-ending list. So, yeah, thanks, Coach. Next up, I got the 2020 girls basketball team. Then I got the 1971 Brit Wrestling State Championship team. Current Iowa State football player Rylan Barnes. The four Hartman brothers. That'll be a good one. You guys will want to tune
Oh
into.
yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
And then, in my
Hey,
opinion,
hey,
one
hey,
of
hey, you need to get Kelly on there too. Kelly
Kelly.
was another one that was happy to have a girl because Kelly had four boys too.
Oh,
So yeah, Kelly was happy to have Abby in the neighborhood. So
yep.
yeah, make sure you put her on that list
She
with
is.
him.
She's going in like May. I think I'm gonna do an episode with Kennedy.
But make sure she takes notes on the boys.
Yeah, yep. I
Nice.
think she would have been the best wrestler in the family.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then my fifth episode coming up here in the next couple months, John Mallon. I think he's one of the best all-around athletes we've had
Oh yeah.
in many, many
For
years.
sure.
And John was the guy that spearheaded when I was doing that record book. He wrote me a check for a couple $100 and said, whatever the book costs, take that out. The rest donate to the Sanger Fund. And that spearheaded, I think we got like $11,000 out of that project or some crazy number like that. So,
Well, John Mallon, I'm gonna one up John Mallon. He's a way better athlete than I am. You
hey,
got you got a lifetime fund coming, checks written.
I appreciate it. We got some cool things going with the Sanger Legacy Fund, and just want to keep it going and keep honoring Coach and Mrs. Sanger. So, Fellas, what else? Last minute thing here. What can you say as we wrap this thing up?
Well, it's been an honor, Danny. Thanks. I appreciate it. You're doing great things. Keep it up. Mr. Ambassador, thanks for gracing us with your presence tonight. And Mr. AEA, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to hang with us common people like Dan and myself. We appreciate you guys like you.
Us lowly Gen Eds, so yeah. And
I
Muller,
think for
I
me, Dan,
mean,
just to be with Brian and Chuck and you today, and you know, Brian and Chuck. We were brought from nothing. I mean, we came from different environments, and be able to just be a part of this, and just very. I think we're all three very proud of being part of West Hancock, and I think that's the true testament of a great school district. And Coach Sanger, I think, was really part of that environment that we were so proud to be a part of. So thank you for doing that, Dan. Thank you for just doing your work. I think that you won't take you like kind of like T, you won't take the credit, but your legacy has done great for the community of West Hancock. So thank you.
thank you.
Yep, I would just echo all of that sentiment. It's been an absolute trip the last hour and a half hanging out with these two guys again, and you, Dan, and telling stories is all well and good, but every opportunity that I get, I'm with you, Brian. I think about Coach on a daily basis, and a variety of situations. But anytime you get a dedicated time like this to commit to, like, really sinking into some of those memories and stories, it's really special time. So really enjoyed it. And Dan, I'll say it again. I said it last time. The work that you're doing here, the time that you commit to making sure that this continues, it's great. It's entertaining and all, but the real reason behind it and what motivate you, your love of your community and your love of your hometown, it's amazing. And keep up the great work, my friend.
Thank you. Well, I always tell people when they say that it's easy because it's Britt, it's Kanawha, it's West Hancock. Like what there's not many communities like it. And it makes it real easy to want to do stuff like this. So my last story, Coach Sanger, his visitation and funeral were what, 3, 4, 5 days after he passed. I had to pick up my mom from the airport. She was down in Texas, where my sister was living at the time, and I lived close to the airport, so I needed to get her back up home. And she thought she might have a flight delay because there was some weather down there. And she was sitting in the airport in Dallas, Texas. And my mom just randomly started talking to these people, just sitting there passing the time. And my mom goes, I just hope we don't get delayed. My son's got to pick me up. And then he's got to get all the way up to northern Iowa for a visitation. And he's going to kill me if he misses this visitation. This was one of his favorite people of all time. And the lady goes, Oh, you're talking about Bob Sanger, aren't you? And my mom was like, Yes, random lady from Dallas, Texas. They had some Algona ties, I guess, and they lived in Denver. But you know how, people knew, he's just a legend in that area. And it just blew my mind. Like, who doesn't know this guy? It
Yeah.
was just a crazy cool thing. And drove up there, and the weather wasn't great here. And, I saw Chuck and stood in line for several hours, and it was just a testament to Coach Sanger and what killed me was when I got up to the front and I got to Mrs. Sanger and she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry you had to wait so long." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like she's
Yeah.
only always
Yeah.
worried
Classic
about
Linda.
other
It's the
people.
mindset.
Like, please stop. But just in her DNA. So
Yeah.
Bro.
so, well, fellas, thanks again for coming on. I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. It's been 5 years. Here we are still talking about the guy. And every day at school, every day, wherever we might be, whatever we're doing, like you were saying, Ben, with your interview, there's just Coach Sanger stuff coming out of us and just showing up in whatever ways need be. So, been 5 years. We miss you, Coach. And I always end with Go Eagles. I always start with hello, folks, but I'm going to end and start the same way. Let's get after it, people. Have a
Yeah.
good night, everybody.
Yeah. Go Eagles.
Go